You work for a consumer watchdog publication and are testing the advertising claims of a tire manufacturer. The manufacturer claims that the lifespans of the tires are normally distributed with a mean of 40,000 miles and a standard deviation of 4,500 miles. You test 16 tires and get the following lifespans. Complete parts A through C below. In order to do this using technology, we're going to use StatCrunch. If you left click this icon, you can either copy it to clipboard, open in Excel, or open in StatCrunch. If you open in StatCrunch, and I'm going to demonstrate right here, you get this smaller window, and you cannot adjust the size of the window. And if I go ahead and use this icon to increase the size of the window, you'll see that we have a problem with the data that's inside StatCrunch. So I'm going to close this and we're going to start over. And what I would recommend doing is left clicking over here where it says question help, then left click StatCrunch, which will open a new window. But this window is resizable, and we'll go ahead and left click here and we'll say copy to clipboard. And now you see that these are all highlighted. Go ahead and press Control and C simultaneously and bring back your open StatCrunch window, and then press Control and V simultaneously, and you'll see that your data is listed. Next, what I want to do is I want to sort the data from least to greatest. So I will left click the data button here, and I will scroll down to sort, and I will left click sort, and I need to left click and highlight the column so it shows up in the input field over to the right. We want to sort in ascending, so left click compute, and you'll now see that the data has been sorted from least to greatest. We then will left click stat, and then we will left click or highlight summary stats and left click columns. I will left click and highlight sort, which is the second column, and I'm going to need some information. I want to know how many values there are. I want to know what the mean is. So in order to select the mean, notice that if I left click on it, I lose the N. But if I left click on N and then hold the control key down and left click mean, and then standard deviation, since this is a sample, I want to use this input in StatCrunch. I also want to have the median. So once again, I'm holding the control key down. I want to know what the range is, and I need to know what the min and max values are. So now left click compute, and you have this new window that pops up and gives you some additional information. We know that the mean is 36,636.875. We know what the standard deviation is. We know the median, the range, the minimum value, and the maximum value. The first part of this problem is graph it. Create a histogram. So we will create a histogram using StatCrunch. So left click graph, left click histogram. We're going to use this column, the sort column, and we're going to start with the minimum value, which was the reason that I told you to create the minimum value in the stat window. So minimum value will be 23990. Now, I want to know what the width is. So I'm going to take the range, which is 23929, and I'm going to divide that by the number of classes that we're going to use. And if you look at each one of these histograms in the multiple choice, you'll see that there are 5 bars in each one, which means that we are trying to create a histogram with 5 classes. So we take 23,929 and divide by 5, and that gives approximately 4,785.8. So we'll round that up to 5,000. Left click compute, and you now have a histogram. And you can compare that histogram to the 3 histograms that are in my stat lab. And you'll notice that histogram A is the one that looks just like the one that we have just created. So I will left click radio button for A and left click final check. Left click the OK on the nice work. Left click continue. The next part of this says, is it reasonable to assume that lifespans are normally distributed? Why? Choose the correct answer below. And of course, you're going to choose this based upon what is being stated here. We picked a symmetric or bell-shaped curve, so the histogram is symmetric and bell-shaped. Is it reasonable to assume that the lifespans are normally distributed? Well, yes, because the histogram is symmetric and bell-shaped. Next, find the mean of your sample. Well, we've already done that. The mean is 36,636.8, but we're going to round to one decimal place. So that's going to be 36,636.9. We will left click check answer. Now we need to find a standard deviation. Once again, we found the standard deviation. Standard deviation is 6,940.8. Left click check answer. Part C, compare the mean and standard deviation of your sample with those in the manufacturer's claim. Discuss the differences and choose the correct answer below. Well, I know that 40,000 was the claim for the mean, and we have a mean of 36,636, which means our mean is less than the manufacturer's. The manufacturer stated that the standard deviation was 4,500 miles, and we have a standard deviation that's greater than that of 6,940. So the sample mean is less than the claimed mean, and the sample standard deviation is greater than the claimed standard deviation, which means that the tires do not last as long in the sample as what the manufacturer claims, and that there's a greater variation in the lifespans. So we look simply for the sample mean is less than the claimed mean. So on average, the tires lasted for a shorter time, and the standard deviation is greater than the claimed standard deviation. So we will choose C, final check, and we are done with the problem.